Jim Myers and our Rotary 100th Anniversary History Moment. Take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Randy. Going back to August 31st, 1926, a new and interesting meeting was held Tuesday afternoon. The sons and daughters of the Rotarians were entertained. Those that were in college told of the schools they were attending, and I hope some of our older members might recognize a few of these names. The speakers were, and these were the collegiate members, Arita and Gwendolyn Drew, who were going to Kent State, Jane Andrews at Western College for Women, Robert Stouffer, Wabash College, Louise Getz, the University of Akron, Robert Andrews, Brown University. And now it becomes rather personal to me. Charles Young, Western Reserve, who became my boss and partner at Thompson's Drugstore, and three of my wife's relatives, Uncle Roy Salter of Mount Union, and those who became my in-laws, Sally's mother, Jessie Salter, who attended Ohio Wesleyan, her father, who became my father-in-law, John Wolcott, Ohio State University, and that was before the was added, obviously before the Great Depression. Well, I'm sorry that the history moment was so personal, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks again, Jim. Really nice to get some history on this momentous year that we're experiencing here. All right, I think we're ready to move on to our program. I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you again, everyone. Thanks for having us. And before I get started with the introductions, Jim, I have to thank you for the education on the Chautauqua Salute. My wife's family is from Lake Chautauqua, so I've been a big hit and I've been bragging and showing off the Chautauqua Salute, so thank you. So thanks again, everyone, for having Kent City Schools. Again, part one was Mr. George Joseph and sharing our whole district plan moving into the unknown of this fall and the start of the school year. And last week, you were kind enough to host the 4 elementary principals. And so today we have 2 people you're very familiar with. The principal at Stanton Middle School, Anthony Horton, and our principal at Roosevelt High School, Dennis Love. And I appreciate it. It's really cute. It looks like they matched today. So nice job, gentlemen. That's cute. And today the topic is obviously the uniqueness and the challenges moving into the school year at the middle school and high school level. So Anthony and Dennis, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, I'll get started, Dennis, if you don't mind. All right, guys. Well, good afternoon, everybody. As you guys all know, it's been a great year for education. Education's a bit all over the place throughout this whole country and the world. But here in Kent City Schools and at Stanton, we're going to do a hybrid model. And basically that means we're going to have kids Tuesday, Thursdays, and Wednesday, Fridays. Then we have another cohort that's going to be fully remote. So with that being said, as a building principal, you think about, okay, what's the first step? And then the first step is let's get our priorities straight. Our first goal is safety. We make sure everybody's safe. And that's a big fear for everybody. So we concentrate on safety. How can we make the building safe? How can we make everything we do in our schools safe? So that's safety. And then the second goal was make sure our kids continue to get a good quality education. So those are 2 goals that everything we did here at Stanton, that's what we base those 2 things off of. And the first step, we said, let's look at the logistics of the building. How can we make this building safe? And so we started thinking about things and had a committee. So we came up with a good safety plan for the school. And it was kind of tough at first because we had no idea how many kids were going to be remote or how many kids were going to be hybrid. And so we got some information that we figured out that roughly 30% of our kids are going to be remote. So with those numbers, and we went by teams, we have teams at the middle school. There's 9 different teams at the middle school. So based off the teams, an average, and it's about 80 kids per team. And so we started thinking, okay, what numbers can be safe? Because we can only fit about 12 kids per classroom with 6 foot social distancing. guidelines. And so with those numbers, just say we have 80 kids per team, and minus 30% of those kids gonna be remote. So now you have 56 kids per team. Then you take those 56 kids and you divide those 56 kids into two, because they're gonna be in school on Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday. And so, so roughly with those numbers, you're gonna have about 28 kids per team during a school day, ideally. And so with those numbers, we say, okay, let's figure out the logistics of the building. And so traditionally, when kids come in the building, they go straight to the cafeteria, or they all congregate in the main office hallway until 7:10, then they go to their homerooms. Obviously, with that, we can't have kids congregate in the hallway. So we had to change our plan up a little bit. So now when kids come in, they're gonna get breakfast in the cafeteria, but instead of congregating in the hallways, all the kids gonna go straight to their homeroom pods, their homeroom hallways. So they can't get in their homeroom, because some of our kids get here around 6:55, 7 o'clock. Some kids get here after 7:10, 7:15. But before 7:10, they will go to their homeroom hallways, and they will stay in there. And everything is spread out. We got 6-foot markers on the floors. We got directional signage everywhere in the building. In the restroom, each hallway, the hallways, cafeteria. There's a lot of signage in the building, so that'll help our students out. So once the kids get into right in the building, they go their homeroom hallways, and they stay in there till 7:10. Then at 7:10, they will go to their homerooms. Also this year, we're not using lockers. We always had lockers, since this building was open. This year, nobody's using lockers, and so they go to their homerooms, and they stay there for class. Once the class piece gets started, we have the class, and then our building, we're very fortunate to have specials, a lot of specials. And so we had to come up with a plan, because we wanted the hallways to be too crowded. So we came up with a plan with having a staggered special schedule. So if you're about to go to your special at a grade level, you'll be staggered by a couple minutes apiece to go to your specials, to keep the crowders now down in the hallways. Same thing for lunch. You have a staggered lunch schedule. So when you do go to lunch, you have a staggered schedule. And that way, like I said, to keep the crowd down in the hallways. After that, I was like, okay, how can we have kids eat lunch when we practice social distancing? And so we talked to our business director, and we're going to get plexiglass dividers on our lunch tables. And so with those plexiglass dividers, we can have up to 2 kids per lunch table in our cafeteria. So all the kids be able to be seated fine in the cafeteria. So that's a good thing. So 2 kids per table. And after that, they will go back to their classes on a staggered schedule as well. Also, we got to talk about recess. What will the recess look like? Because usually our kids play basketball, they walk on the track. Sometimes they play soccer or touch football out there. And obviously you can't do some of those things right now. And so we had so our PE teachers are working on activities that kids can do outside to practice, to have some recess time outside that's safe for everybody. So after lunch is over, they go back to their classes, and then at the end of the day, we have a staggered dismissal time. And so instead of everybody leaving this building at 2:40, several hundred kids come out the building, we got them staggered so the kids can go to bus safely. So we can try to practice those social distancing guidelines. That's the logistics part. And that worked out pretty good, at least on paper so far, it's working out pretty good. And then we're going to talk about the educational piece. How can our teachers teach, remote kids and face-to-face kids? How can they do that? And also you got to consider teachers going to be working from home due to health conditions, or they can't come in the building. So we had to figure the educational piece. And that's probably the toughest part. But right now we got to figure it out that all our teachers will be teaching, face-to-face classes. And then also they will be teaching 1 period a day remote kids. So every teacher will have remote kids, at least one period a day, and also face-to-face kids for their regular schedules. Now, once we figure that part out, well, how the specials will look, art, PE, band, choir, orchestra, those type of things. They'll do the same thing. They will teach, face-to-face, and then during their, at the end of the day, on Mondays, those teachers will be teaching the remote kids. So once we get that figured out, another problem came up. What about advanced math? What about special education kids? So we had to figure out a plan for advanced math kids and for special education kids, make sure they get their services as well. So we got that figured out. So right now we're in a pretty good spot, scheduling wise in the building. Our council's been doing a fantastic job. They're working all the details out, and hopefully by tomorrow, Thursday, all the schedules for the most part should be done with a few tweaks here and there. And then we can send some information out this weekend for the parents for to start school on Monday or Tuesday, technically. Also, once we got the logistics worked out, the academic piece worked out, we had to have the human part, the teacher part worked out, because our teachers, we got a great teaching staff, but you know, they have anxiety, they got concerns, they got a lot of questions. And so when we had our staff meeting, we talked about just having a positive attitude coming here. We're gonna do what's best for our kids. We also talked about just how we growing and evolving, because this is changing education forever. I don't think after this pandemic, education ever gonna look the same for the most part. So we talked about, you know, how we can get better as a team, how we get better as teachers. And a lot of our teachers, they get very comfortable in their teaching zone. And sometimes they scared to step out the box, but most of our teachers step out the box, they learn new things. They're like first year teachers, a lot of them. And so a lot of them are they're taking this negative situation to a positive. And so our teachers are excited this year. Once they figure out, you know, the blueprint for the safety protocols, the, you know, education piece, how they're going to be teaching. So I think our teachers are excited about it. And I think, you know, I think we're in a good spot right now here at Stanton. And to be honest with you, probably about 90% of our teachers, maybe more, have a great attitude. We still got a few that's a little bit, you know, nervous or a little bit, you know, have high anxiety about the situation. But over 90% of my teachers in my building are great. They're very supportive. They kind of mean, Anthony, I know you're busy, but what can I do to help you out? And I appreciate that by our staff. And so I think next week when we start school, I think it's going to be good. The first day may be a little bit, you know, crazy. But after that, I think we'll have a flow going, and I think we'll be in pretty good shape, you know, here at Stanton. I know I'm going to let Dennis talk for a little while. And also, Dennis probably bring up sports too, because some of you guys are probably thinking about sports. And so Dennis can talk about that, and I'll chime in as well. Thank you, guys. Go ahead, Dennis. You're muted, Dennis.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I had to go outside because of some technical difficulties. Well, it sounds like we didn't need to do anything the past couple of weeks, because we could have just listened to what Anthony in the middle school was doing and would have been fine at the high school, because we're doing pretty much very similar things that they're doing at the middle school. Our priorities were safety, and our priorities were learning. And when it came to safety, and I'll kind of echo what Anthony ended with, as far as, boy, the majority of our staff, community members, and students have been just incredible to work with. They've been extremely supportive. They understand this is a really rough time in education, and they just realize that many of us are really trying hard to get school as normal as possible. So we've had a lot of great support. So that led us into the safety conversation, and early in the summer, or I should say mid-July, we started to talk about with our support staff, our aides, our tutors, cafeteria ladies, administrative team, and we started to put some documents out there as far as what's the safe school going to look like from the time the student enters that parking lot to the time they leave. And we have been spending hours upon hours, days, if not, on that document. And hopefully we'll have that ready to be delivered out to the public, so our parents, teachers, and students can all look at that as if you know, they're walking through this building and understand exactly what to do. We're going to try to do some videotaping here tomorrow, so the students have a clear picture of what it would look like for breakfast, lunch, hallway traffic, locker use, and all that. And you know, so that's what we've been working on as far as safety goes. The learning piece, you know, we will also, just like everybody else in the district, have that blended learning along with remote learning for about 22% of our students. And, you know, really the questions that we are trying to answer right now is how will our teachers teach in their classroom and at home for those students who are at home? So that's going to be a challenge, and that's why we've really spent these last 2 weeks, or so far like a week and 2 days on that, so they can hone their craft where they can do both. What learning standards are the most important? Because, you know, now we really have to for some of those subject areas that have just so many learning standards, how can we really narrow it down into what are the most important things we have to cover so that 9th grader and 10th grader, 11th or 12th grader get exactly what they need to do in order to be successful at that next level. And then how are you going to assess student learning? I mean, this is we're moving away from those days of just here's your paper pencil test, true, false, multiple choice. And now we have to be able to create strong assessments where students can do that from home. And we all know that, and this is a great thing about the world we live in. A lot of students can find their answers out online. So how can those tests really tap into those critical thinking skills that students need to have, problem solving skills, and project-based skills. So, those are some things that we're trying to get better at. Simple things like how do you take attendance? How's that going to work when half your students aren't there on a certain day? How will we make sure that they really are logging in and doing those assignments? We expect all of our staff to have a Google Classroom. That's an easy way for them to touch base with all their students and put their presentations, their sample lessons, or just a quick way, easy way to communicate. So everybody should have a Google Classroom. And then, we have to look at our staffing too, because we do have some of our teachers who will be remote learning because of some health reasons. And certainly we don't want them in the building if it's not safe for them. So they will be, teaching remotely. And so, finding those staff to come in and to try to fill in their role here is going to be a challenge, but it's, it's something that we've been working with Mr. Larkin on, and we feel really good about where we're at and what we're going to need for next week. So that's really like the learning piece. Learning really can be extremely exciting at this point in time because hopefully we're moving away from those dreaded state tests and some of those other assessments that are outside of school that really kind of box you into this is what you have to teach and here's how you teach it, where we can kind of create our own ways to target the learning standards and then not be weighed down by some of those state assessments that really just take a lot of time away from what we could be doing with kids. Because I feel very blessed, and I think we should all feel very blessed about the teaching staff and our school system in Kent, and leaving it up to those professionals to really determine where our kids are at. Activities and sports, a whole another big piece to this for us, and I'm sure at the middle school too. It looks like maybe September 4th could possibly be our first football game, but you should see the amount of schedules that we've had so far this year. From we're going to play this team week 1 to this team week 2. We're going to start in October. We're going to start mid-September. We're going to start early September, and now some schools are starting day 1. So many conflicting reports about what health departments want and what we should have and what we should do. And so recently we settled in on September 4th being really the kickoff for our fall sports. Hopefully that could be successful. Our coaches and trainers have been incredible throughout the summer as far as taking temperatures, keeping kids social distance, making sure the weight room's clean. And we've really had minimal issues when it's come to sporting events this summer because of their hard work. And also the students. The students have been incredible, following the instructions and also showing up. This year is just as high, if not higher, as far as our participation goes for our athletics, during summertime workouts. Now everybody else, I think September 4th is that Friday before Labor Day weekend. So everybody else will start that September 8th when it comes to their sports seasons. And we'll see how that looks, because I think we all realized during this pandemic time, the best laid plans are just kind of be thrown out the window if somebody is sick, because no matter what we do, we're always going to defer back to the safety of our students and staff and community members. Another activities and stuff that we're looking at is like we have a huge freshman mentor group. I think probably you guys realize from so many of my Rotary presentations, many of those people I present are freshman mentors, and they help the freshmen out. And so that's going to look very different. Our advisors are trying to create ways in which we can communicate with those freshmen and still be engaged with them. Student council things can look extremely different this year. And but how can we still engage with our kids and make the best possible situation for all of our students? Because we try to have that mindset that these seniors, this is their last chance to go through high school, and we want to create the best possible opportunities for them to be successful and in a safe environment. So student council is going to try to figure out ways in which we can still have certain events throughout the school year. And and our hope right now is maybe we can see some normalcy if a vaccine comes out in November or December, and see some normalcy the second half of the school year is what we're really shooting for when it comes to that. Professional development here, before we turn it over to questions, is three things that we're really trying to focus on this year during our professional development time is, one, we still are going to go through with professional learning communities, something I talked about, I think, years ago during my first year as principal with Rotary Club. And we really want teachers aligned, collaborating. You know, for instance, if we want our ninth grade English teachers working together, and we want them working together with special ed teachers, and it'd be even better if they're working with social studies teachers, science teachers, and in the core areas. So we're all doing that together and sharing our data about our students, and we're going to continue to move forward with that. Anti-racism training. You know, our society right now probably has two pandemics going on. One with the virus, and the other one with all the racism issues that we're facing as a society. And we really have to all look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what can we do to create an equitable and inclusive environment at Roosevelt High School? And so we're moving forward with that task force. We started that this summer, and we've already done some really cool, amazing things. And I can only imagine where we're going to be at after this year, and then in the next 1 to 5 years when it comes to that. And we're going to really kick things off with that. We have some good books that we're thinking about reading with our staff to start early on, and we'll do that. And then the last thing we're going to also focus on is our new teaching evaluation system. This is the first. Next year we'll have it's Ohio Teaching Evaluation System. It's otherwise refers to as OTES 2.0, and it's going to look very different in certain areas for our staff. And so we want to make sure our staff is prepared to move forward with that, because that'll be their official evaluation system for next year. And a couple things when it comes to that it really focuses in on is collaboration and being able to have evidence to be able to support that, you know, that students have really learned in your class. You know, trying to really shift away from that idea of, it's very easy to say you're going to educate people. And as you can see during these remote times, we can find all sorts of platforms out there that will educate our kids, but how do we know that the students are actually learning? So that new evaluation system is going to make us is forcing us to, which is a great thing, to provide that evidence to show that the students have learned. And so we're going to really try to stick through that with our professional development time this year as we move forward, and that's how we'll get better. So I guess that's all I have to say right now. So I'm free to answer any questions.
Got one right here. For any of you three, Jim Myers, have you considered, or are you going to be able to simultaneously teach in person as well as online, remotely, at the same time?
Jim, Anthony, do you want to answer that first, Anthony? Go ahead.
Sure. We can do that. We had the capability of doing that. So ideally, we like to have our teachers teach remote kids, you know, at the same pace as our face-to-face kids. But there's still going to be certain situations where a teacher has to be doing synchronous teaching on remote and live at the same time. But we had the capability of doing that.
Good.
Yeah, it's not the ideal system, but what we did is we made sure that we have a system in place where we have our blended learners and remote learners can really be on a similar platform, because we know during this pandemic things could change within a week's time, and so we felt like that was still the best way to do things. But what we may do is if we have a government teacher who's remote, for instance, they'll take all the remote government students, and then we'll dump the rest of the students who are going to be here in the building with the government teachers who will be here. So we're able to help with that. And then also recently our teachers have really stepped up and are understanding the new technology out there where they can also be teaching for the kids in the class, where the remote learners can watch them and still ask questions through their Google Classroom and through that digital platform.
This is Lang. I have a question. Procedure on wearing masks. Do students wear masks or not?
Yes, at the high school they will be wearing masks. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a mandate from the governor that in-school students have to wear masks. Students, staff have to wear masks.
Yep, same thing here, Lang, at Stanton. Everybody got to wear a mask. Teachers, students, everybody in the building got to have a mask on. So, and so far so good with that. But yeah, that's our mandate that we have to have, and Tom can talk more about it. But we signed off on it. We got that directive from the governor, I believe, and I think our union backed that up too, Tom. I believe, correct?
I had a quick question, and my kids are older, not in the school system, so excuse me if it sounds ignorant, but are classes being recorded so students can go back and look at the actual live viewing for those people that are remote, or is it a different teacher in a different class for the remote learners?
Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. Well, we have, like, when our teachers, let's say that teacher teach 4 periods a day. And so in hour blocks. And so the one period, the teacher will be teaching remotely. So she won't have any face-to-face kids. That teacher will be teaching in the classroom by herself, teaching remote kids on the screen or using a smart board. And those sessions can be recorded. So somebody want to come back and look at it later if they missed something. And also sometimes our teachers would do other lessons like at night and just record it, and then they can play it for the teachers as well, or play it for the students as well. So they can be recorded, but usually our face-to-face classes will not be recorded, but our online classes can be recorded with the teacher.
At the high school, we will have some teachers who may take their lesson and record that. Some may actually just make their lesson, outside the classroom and send that out. So it really depends on the teacher and how the assignment would look. So it could be it could really vary between teacher to teacher at the high school.
And if I could just add in, those are great responses. Even before the pandemic, we have in most of our classrooms, if not all of our classrooms, what we call smart boards. And I know some of you may not be familiar with that, but it's an interactive technology where when we all grew up, it was on a chalkboard or blackboard. Now it's an electronic board, and the teachers have capabilities of recording everything that they write on there. So for example, my wife teaches advanced geometry. She can record, and it won't be her face and her teaching, but she can record everything that she taught that day on there, hit record. And so if the students are at home struggling with their geometry lesson, they can log on to her Google Classroom and then get into the notes and the demonstrations that she used in class to help them with their assignments. So it's amazing the technology that is around.
I have a question. Wondering at either the high school, well, both schools really, what are the new things that counselors and intervention specialists are doing to get to the kids that need that type of extra help through the school year with everything going on? I'm just interested to hear that.
Sure.
Anthony, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, our counselors, they're in the building right now working on the schedules, working on the details out. But for the kids who are struggling and who need some extra support, obviously they're face-to-face. If they're in the building, they'll be face-to-face. They will support those students. And also if they're remote, they will have Google Meets with those kids one-on-one. So they have their small groups or mid groups. Like we have, every year we have like all counselors have groups. And so they can meet those groups virtually, or blended too. Some can be virtual and some can be in person. So those counselors have that ability to connect with those kids. And also we use Coleman and Children's Advantage as well too. And same thing with those counselors that support our kids. They will do the same thing. If they're face-to-face, if they're here in the building, they'll meet those kids in the building. But if they're remote, they will set times up to have Google Meets use to remote, help those kids out or virtually.
Yeah, very similar at the high school. Our counselors are really working out a plan in which the students have a great understanding of if they need to see them during second period, how will that look? And, and again, we're going to use the technology that we have because our counseling offices are very tiny. And so they don't allow for a lot of social distancing. So we're going to try to create areas in where their counselors can meet with those kids, whether it's virtual or in person. And then they've been meeting with people right now, schedule-wise, virtually. As far as special ed goes, that could be really difficult. First of all, our special ed students, a lot of them have the opportunity to be here more than 2 days a week through the blended learning process. if they need extra assistance. So we have that. I know that's the same way throughout the district. And then, but we still have a number of those students who have chose to be at home. And so that comes in with some of the knowledge and the experience that our staff has, where they can still kind of communicate with those kids and do it in a way in which they're overcoming that disability that student has. And that could be really challenging in certain areas, because sometimes what we find too is that it's a two-pronged issue, that some of those kids that should be in school, we're also having trouble with the technology and and the communication and even to get them online. And so those are some things that we'll have to keep trying to work out.
Dave, if I could hop in too, this is Justin Gates. If I could touch base on the special ed kids, we created a flow chart over the summer because we knew going in, we were concerned about our kids with more moderate to intensive needs receiving those services often have to be in person. And so we created a flow chart that set a criteria this summer for kids. If their parents chose a blended learning model for them to come to school 2 days, then our staff can go through the flow chart with parents and make a determination if those kids should come to school for up to 5 days a week. And so we have that option out there. We also have, we contract annually with both Children's Advantage and Coleman Professional Services, provide additional counseling services to our students. And in addition to what our fantastic counselors at each of our levels can provide, we bring in Children's Advantage and Coleman to provide those really specialized services for those kids who are experiencing some significant trauma or any trauma whatsoever, and that those are there. And I know both Coleman and Children's Advantage are equipped to handle services both in person and remotely. They can do a teletherapy approach if necessary. I think the preference is in person, but because we feel so important, the mental health services for our kids are so impactful. That's one of the areas that we listed on that flow chart, excuse me, that I referenced a minute ago, where kids can come for additional time every week if they have, if they receive related services as well as their core instruction. So like English language arts or math, something along those lines. If they get the related services plus that in the resource room, then they're a candidate for the up to 5 days a week. The other avenue that they could meet that criteria would be if they're a child who's alternately assessed. And about 2% of our tested population takes the Ohio alternate assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And so that would be the other avenue in which those kids could attend school for up to 5 days as well. And that's a conversation between our intervention specialists and parents, and they're coming to a landing spot of what that is. Is it just that the parents are saying, hey, I'm worried about COVID, I only want them there the 2 days? That's okay. We still had the conversation. They may say, oh, Johnny needs an additional day or 2 additional days, whatever it might be. And then the Mondays that where kids aren't coming to school in person, and anyone's not coming to school in person, it's a staff development, collaboration day, but that'll be another day where our intervention specialists, our related service providers are providing those IEP services on Mondays remotely then too for our kids that need it as well. And so we have that flexibility built into our schedule.
Okay.
Ramble a little bit on that.
No problem. Hopefully our speakers can hang around a few minutes afterwards, but I think at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and have our response to the program, and that'll be Nelson Burns today. You're on, Nelson.
Great. Thank you. Anthony and Dennis, thanks so much for your presentation. I'm always impressed when you can take a very complex challenge and turn it into something so professional and so well organized. I'm sure it'll all fall to pieces in a couple of days once the action happens, but I've got a lot of trust in the school system and all the leaders to do the very best job possible. I commend you on the hybrid model because, we're all trying to adjust to these changes. And I do think the more flexible you can be, the more successful you'll be, especially in education. But you know that better than I do. I'm really impressed because you got Larkin and Gates in ties today. You know, that really tells me they're going, especially Larkin. I haven't seen him in a tie in years. The other thought that occurred to me when you were talking about change is, you know, we have a really good opportunity within our organizations to learn about change and what we're going to do to deal with change. And I, you know, with all the change matters, if you can learn something about what we have, I think that's important. And I think we can learn more about how to deal with change. We certainly have it, and we certainly have to address it. Then finally, you talked about children's mental health, so I'm not going to deal with that, but we are seeing an increase in depression and anxiety disorders amongst the kids coming in and thinking about it, or even trying to address the change with their families or communities or school systems. So please know that I think the whole community, especially the Mental Health Recovery Board and the other providers, are really open for anything we can do to be a part of that team. Thank you again for your presentation. Keep up the good work. We're very so proud of you, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you very much, Nelson.
Thank you.
Very well done.